What exactly are we doing here?
Superior orders you to take a life, you follow it. You have your orders, not follow them.
The movie kicks off with an elite group of soldiers known as the Phoenix Team, making their way through a tunnel for a high-risk operation. Their mission? To infiltrate the headquarters of a notorious arms-dealing syndicate in the country of CDE. Moving swiftly, they take down a guard and gain control of the security cameras, turning the surveillance system in their favor. Meanwhile, two of their best snipers, Brandon and his partner Zandy, are stationed outside, waiting for the go-ahead from their teammates. Once the signal is given, Brandon and Zandy carefully select their targets and eliminate them with precision. As the Phoenix team pushes forward, they storm the enemy stronghold, each soldier executing their assigned role. One by one, their adversaries fall silently. However, trouble brews when a mafia member realizes they are under attack. He races to inform his boss, Kovalov, a ruthless crime lord, about the sudden invasion. Understanding the gravity of the situation, Kovalov fires multiple shots into the air, triggering an alarm to summon reinforcements. Chaos erupts as his men scramble to counter the assault. The battlefield intensifies when two snipers from Kovalov's team take aim at Brandon and Zandy.
Tell me what you see.
Fortunately, Zandy spots them in time, and together with Brandon, they neutralize the threat. Desperate to turn the tide, Kovalov and his last remaining ally reposition themselves while putting up a fierce fight. Realizing he's losing control, Kovalov reaches out to his powerful ally,
Theoretically, yes, but...
the country's prime minister, who secretly supports his operations. He demands backup immediately. However, the prime minister delivers bad news. Reinforcements will take at least 1 to 2 hours to arrive. Cornered and running out of options, Kovalov activates a devastating weapon his men have been developing, a last-ditch effort to destroy everything around him. Just as the Phoenix team tightens its grip on the situation, a powerful shockwave rips through the room, sending everyone, including Kovalov and his men, crashing to the ground. 2 days before this intense showdown, a futuristic, dragonfly-like aircraft descends onto the barren lands of Cape Verde. Emerging from the craft is none other than Brandon, who has been summoned for a crucial mission. He is greeted by Commander Modis, who expresses his gratitude for Brandon's arrival, knowing his legendary sniper skills will be invaluable.
Good to meet you.
As they make their way to the base, one of Modi's men, Nova, shares a grim backstory about his homeland. Nova reveals that his father once ruled Cape Verde, but was betrayed and murdered by his own uncle,
Riker Kovalov, the death.
the very man who now serves as the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has since formed an alliance with a Russian mafia leader to develop advanced weaponry that could pose a threat to other nations.
Order to become Maxine's latest weapon?
Upon arriving at the base, Brandon reunites with Zero, an old friend who now heads the CIA. Zero briefs him on their mission to capture Kovalov, the arms dealer responsible for supplying illegal weapons to America.
Say goodbye. Yeah, to keep this one close.
However, with Kovalov's growing influence and his alliance with the Prime Minister, the mission has become more dangerous than ever. Zero introduces Brandon to the team of soldiers who will carry out the mission together.
Is our squad.
Among them is Zandy, a promising but inexperienced sniper who has yet to take a life. Modis emphasizes the importance of training, so the team begins preparing for battle by simulating real combat scenarios.
Their exit will be our entrance.
Brandon personally mentors Zandy, guiding him through his first real test as a sniper. During a break, Zandy asks Brandon about the hardest part of being a sniper. Brandon tells him that taking a life for the first time is the most difficult challenge.
He will.
It's something that stays with a person forever. Later, Modis and his deputy outline the mission plan, assigning specific roles to each team member.
Keep a low profile on this, people.
Proud of the group's potential, Modi's officially names them the Phoenix Team. Later that night, as the soldiers gather for a meal, one of them asks Modi's who his first recruit was. He shares the story of his deputy, Angel, a fearless fighter who once survived an ambush, fighting off multiple attackers despite being stabbed a dozen times.
Set a petrol station on fire.
Impressed, the soldiers encourage Angel to show them her scars, and though shy, she obliges. Meanwhile, Brandon notices two soldiers always sticking together and curiously asks if they are a couple.
Through something like that together?
You become family.
They laugh and clarify that they are siblings, known as the Twin Axes because they rely on their signature weapons, two deadly axes, when all else fails. The following day, Zero finds Angel working on something and asks her about it. She reveals a sketch of a militant's face, the man responsible for her daughter's death. She vows to seek justice, explaining that the man is one of the Prime Minister's trusted enforcers, which is why she joined the Phoenix Team in the first place. As the final preparations take place, Modi's delivers a powerful speech to the troops, reminding them that their primary goal is to capture Kovalov alive so he can be tried in an international court. However, if he resists, they're authorized to eliminate him. That evening, Modi's checks in with Brandon, asking whether Zandy has what it takes to be considered an equal in the field. Given Zandy's lack of real combat experience, Brandon is skeptical and decides to put him to the test that very night. Brandon takes Zandy to a secluded location and points to a man standing outside a nearby house, instructing him to take the shot. Zandy hesitates, struggling with the idea of killing someone without knowing the reason. Sensing his doubt, Brandon reminds him that overthinking is a sniper's worst enemy. Sometimes, pulling the trigger is just part of the job. Eventually, Zandy pulls the trigger, only to find out the gun was loaded with blanks. Confused, he looks at Brandon, who explains that it was a psychological test. If Zandy had refused to take the shot, he would have failed and been removed from the mission. Fortunately, he proved his resolve. Brandon then shares his own experience, revealing that he once failed a similar test, which cost him an additional 2 years of military training. The next day, the Phoenix Team gears up for their mission. They load into their vehicles and move toward their target, leading to the explosive opening sequence of the film. The scene then jumps back to the present, with Kovalov about to unleash his powerful weapon. However, as the dust settles, it becomes clear that everyone, Kovalov included, has survived the blast. Out of nowhere, Zero storms in, pointing a gun straight at Kovalov. Right after, the entire Phoenix squad, including Brandon, rushes in, demanding answers from Modi's about the explosion. Modi's explains that Kovalov's weapon had just unleashed a powerful sonic wave, but luckily, no one was hurt. However, he warns that things are about to get a lot worse. The Prime Minister's heavily armed forces are on their way, and the sonic blast is about to trigger something catastrophic. Before they can react, Modi's and most of the Phoenix squad, including Kovalov, collapse, knocked out cold by the wave's effects. Panic sets in as they realize there's no stopping what's coming. The mastermind behind Kovalov's weapon admits there's nothing they can do. Everyone exposed to the blast is doomed. Only a handful of Phoenix members are still standing, and Zero immediately urges them to evacuate before the Prime Minister soldiers arrive. But Angel isn't willing to abandon their fallen comrades. He insists they need to be buried properly. This sparks a heated argument between him and Zero until Nova steps in, suggesting Brandon should have the final say. After thinking it through, Brandon makes the call. They need to retrieve the weapon's server data. If they fail, the Prime Minister will finish developing the weapon, and entire cities, or even countries, could be wiped out in a matter of minutes. With no time to waste, he orders Zero and Nova to head to the lab, while the rest move their fallen comrades to a safer place. Inside the lab, Nova examines the weapon's progress. It turns out the explosion they witnessed was just a small-scale test. The weapon is already 70% complete. Even worse, multiple nations, including North Korea, have already secured the materials to build their own versions. Zero asks if they can transport the entire server, but Nova shuts that idea down immediately. It would take multiple trucks, which they don't have. That's when Brandon decides to upload all the data to a satellite, making it accessible to the United Nations. Destroying the lab now would be a bad move. They need to keep an eye on any future developments. Back at the base, Brandon gathers the team and lays out the plan. Angel is worried. It'll take time to upload the data, and the Prime Minister's forces are closing in fast. But Brandon stands firm. This is a risk they have to take. Everyone gets their assignments. Nova will handle the data upload while the rest prepare weapons, traps, and defensive positions. Meanwhile, Nova attempts to contact Modi's allies via satellite, hoping for backup, though he's not too optimistic about getting a response. 30 minutes later, the upload is only halfway done. Brandon hands Nova a cell phone, explaining that the first call will detonate a bomb in the hallway, while the second one will blow up the lab. Everyone moves into position, bracing for the incoming assault. Hera, still mourning her brother's death, is determined to fight till the end, craving revenge. The enemy arrives in full force, breaking through their defenses with 2 armored vehicles. Despite being outnumbered, Brandon's squad fights back, taking down dozens of soldiers. During the battle, Hera runs out of ammo and is forced to retreat inside the base. But before she can get far, she's surrounded and pushed into the water. Thinking fast, she tricks her attackers into believing they've got the wrong person. Then, wielding her axe, she takes them down in a ruthless display of skill. Meanwhile, Zero, Angel, and Xandi are pinned down, their ammo nearly depleted. Just when it seems hopeless, Brandon swoops in from the rooftop, ordering them to fall back while he holds the line. Elsewhere, Angel finally comes face to face with the woman responsible for her daughter's death. The two engage in a brutal fight, but in the end, Angel emerges victorious, avenging her daughter. Brandon and Zero cross paths again in the heat of battle. Zero directs Brandon toward the kitchen while he heads into an office filled with enemy soldiers. Brandon, too, finds himself swarmed. At the same time, Nova is ambushed by 7 soldiers. Feeling the pressure, he makes the call, detonating the bombs in the hallway. With the upload now complete, he yells for the team to fall back and regroup at the rendezvous point. Meanwhile, Hera finds herself surrounded once more. The lights suddenly go out, and when she switches on her flashlight, she comes face to face with enemy soldiers. They attack, and despite fighting with everything she has, Hera is ultimately killed. Elsewhere, Brandon pushes his team forward, determined to get them to safety. But as he makes his escape, he's shot, stumbling to the ground. Seeing this, Zero rushes to his side, promising they'll make it through. On another front, Nova takes multiple hits, but Xandi and Angel quickly take down his attackers. Eventually, the entire squad regroups at the rendezvous point. Nova, barely holding on, hands his phone to Brandon, instructing him to make the second call to destroy the lab. Unfortunately, Nova succumbs to his injuries before Brandon can carry out the order. With no other choice, Brandon commands his team to prepare for the final explosion. As enemy soldiers flood the area, Brandon orders his troops to fall back to the tunnels while he stays behind to cover them. But Zero refuses to leave, reminding Brandon that he was the one who convinced him to take this mission in the first place. He's not going anywhere. Brandon then turns to Angel and Xandi, telling them they must deliver the server data to the United Nations. It's the only way to stop the Prime Minister's plans for good. With no more hesitation, Brandon and Zero charge into the open, taking down enemy soldiers one after another until they run out of ammo and are completely surrounded. Just when all hope seems lost, reinforcements arrive, wiping out the remaining enemy troops. It turns out Nova's call for backup wasn't in vain. Modi's allies had received the message and come through at the last moment. They quickly rush Nova to a hospital, discovering he's still alive. With the mission complete, Brandon and Zero return to America. There, Xandi and Angel express their gratitude, relieved that the Prime Minister has been brought to justice. Even better, his successor is none other than Nova, who is still recovering in the hospital. In the end, Brandon and Zero walk away, their job finally done.